And a good morning to you and welcome to K24 This Morning. My name is Jeff Mote. On October the 12th, at a point where schools are reopening at this particular point in time, as the eye watches across the country to see how this will unfold. This is a discussion we'll be having right here in studio as we look at how we move forward as far as the education system is concerned and what is being looked at recovering what was almost a lost academic year. That's a discussion we're having in studio. We have a very able panel to go through that particular discussion. In case you want to be included on it as well, grab yourself a copy of your People Daily. That story makes front and center of your PD. You can get it straight to your phone, by the way. The number that you dial is star 550 star 4 hash. Once again, the number is star 550 star 4 hash. Dial that number and get yourself a copy of a People Daily straight to your phone. It's brought to you by the People Daily and Safaricom. So once again, the number that you dial is star 550 star 4 hash. Dial it and get yourself a copy of your e-paper, the PD. And in that copy on the front page, hope and anxiety as schools open. Head teachers in a rush to do their final touches on their institutions, even as parents and guardians are wary of what the future holds for their children. However, almost 200 schools will not reopen. The sad reality of the blow that the COVID pandemic has dealt with very many sectors in society. And you can get that story in your copy of your People Daily. That's on page 4 and 5 therein. Also on the front page of the PD, matters politics as well. Ruto cries foul over cancelled meeting, vows to continue Harambes. So even after the National Security Advisory Committee gave direction as to how these gatherings would take place, firming up the Public Order Act as well, as you can see, Ruto saying that it seems like it's focusing more on others and giving others more leeway to have their freedom of association. And that story is on page 7 of your PD. Also on the political beat, still in the PD, weekend to remember for Raila and Mount Kenya allies. That story front and center as well in your copy of your People Daily. Finally, as we leave the PD, how your county spent budget billions. Majority overshot the recommended amount for salaries with none meeting their own revenue target. It's been a key issue of concern as to how these devolved units can actually get some financial independence by generating their own revenue and ideally meeting their revenue targets. That's a story that you can get on page 2 of your People Daily this morning. Once again, like I told you, it is only 10 shillings and the convenience to your phone. The number that you dial, star 550 star 4 hash. Front page of the Standard now, defiant but sorry, Ruto's new normal. This is a quote from the DP. I'm taking this opportunity to say to all that I may have wronged them in one way or another. I kindly ask for forgiveness. Of course, this weekend being National Prayer Weekend, even as we went through that, and various leaders asking for forgiveness for where they might have gone wrong. That story can be found in your copy of your Standard at the front page. Also in your Standard, it still matters politics. The future of Mount Kenya is in ODM. Jimmy Wanjigi joins ODM leader at a church function in Siaya and asks President Uhuru's backyard to join the Orange Party to secure their political future. That story can be found there as well in your copy of your Standard on page 7. On page 2 of your Standard, business unusual as learning resumes. Little activity witnessed at bus stages and shops, even as teachers worry about lack of funds and COVID safety measures. That story can be found on page 2 as learning resumes this particular week. You can get that story as well in your copy of your Standard. Moving on now to the front page of the Daily Nation. What awaits the school children? Apart from wearing masks for protection against COVID-19, children will maintain social distance inside and outside the classroom with no play, games or sports. Some children in private institutions will, however, have no school to return to after the learning centers were shut or converted into other use for lack of business. As you can see right there, a picture of Franklin Kowech in grade 4, Stephanie Njeke as well, trying on their new uniform, beaming with smiles, of course, as they get back to learning, but bigger questions looming even as they resume learning at their respective institutions. You can get that story as well in your copy of your Daily Nation. Also in the Daily Nation, the return of Jimmy Wanjigi, of course, after being at that particular ODM meeting and wooing Mount Kenya to be on the correct side as far as political alignments are concerned. They dig deeper into the return of this particular businessman, and that story is on page 4 and 5 of your Daily Nation this morning. Finally, from page of the Star now, Ruto's headache over Raila Mount Kenya support. With Central now a battleground, DP's solid political bastion remains his Rift Valley backyard. They're talking about political arithmetic. Raila's alliance with Central threatens Deputy President's fortunes. As you can see right there, DP Ruto at a church service in Kennel on October the 4th. And on the other side of that particular front page, we have Kikuyu elders being shown photos by former PM Raila Odinga right there. This happened over the weekend. That story, of course, taking front and center of your star. But right here on the show, it's all about matters education right here. And you want to know if you're ready for these schools to be reopened. That's a question you'll be posing to you as well, even as we start, because this is day one as far as resumption of learning in these various institutions are concerned. That's a discussion we're having front and center. Welcome. This is your newspaper review on K24 This Morning. And welcome back. Even before I get to my panel, we do have a question of the day that we're posing to you as well. As students in grade 4, class 8 and form 4 resume learning, are you confident with schools reopening today? It's a question very many parents have been grappling with even as the day inched closer. Are you confident with schools reopening today? That's a question we are posing to you. The WhatsApp number is at the bottom of the screen. You can send us your WhatsApp messages there. You can also get me on Twitter at @IamJeffMote or at K24 TV. Once again, are you confident with schools reopening today? Send us your feedback, your thoughts, your suggestions as well as to how this could be done better. Of course, with that WhatsApp number at the bottom of the screen. As we discuss this, let me get to my panel in studio, of course, to dig a bit deeper into this particular issue. In studio, if it's a Monday, John Paul Opuko usually is in that seat right there. He's a governance expert and educationist as well. Good morning, John Paul.
Good morning, Jeff. How are you?
Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Asante sana. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, thank you.
We also have the CEO of the Kenya Private Schools Association, Peter Ndoro. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Karibu sana, Peter.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to the show.
Asante for having me.
Even before we started the show, I wanted all of us to put our offices aside, step out of the roles we play in terms of official duty, and speak as parents. Are we confident that this is a good time to send our children back to school? Do we feel that all manner of safety measures have been put in place? Let's send the boys and girls back to school. Let me start with John.
Jeff, asante sana. I think parents have always trusted our teachers. I think that is also a plus for us because these are people who sit with the kids for almost 7-8 hours. So to me, I think the parents will have that confidence with the teachers. The only maybe unfortunate part will be maybe most of the teachers will not be able to report because as I said here in the last show, some of the teachers are not around. Some schools have been shut down. Some have been going through psychological and trauma issues. So I think that might be a factor. But in terms of trust and confidence, our parents really trust our teachers. So maybe that will now give them confidence to send their kids to school.
Okay.
Yes.
Peter, not as CEO, as father of the home, feel confident enough if you had a grade 4 student or class 8 or form 4 to send them back to their school today?
Thank you very much for having me. I want to state as a parent that my desire would be to have my child in school because I'm looking at the greater benefits of having the child in school vis-a-vis having the child at home. At the moment, we have been convinced by our medical team, our Ministry of Health, and every other person involved, especially in the back-to-school program, that our children will be safe. Therefore, it is important that we take our children back to school. So today, as we speak, in as much as I have no child in grade 4, form 4, but I have children in other classes,
right. But
of course I have nieces, I have nephews who will be going to school today. And right. I'm confident that they will be safe when they get back to school. Okay,
let's get right into it then. Even as we proceed with schools being reopened today, what are our expectations of this particular term, so to speak? What are you expecting as they get back to school? It's been quite a break for very many of them, even with some digital learning taking place. But what do you expect for this term when you look at it holistically, John?
Jeff, this week basically just we can say preparation week. Because today is when maybe the teachers will report to see the number of students who have reported, those with maybe masks and other PPEs in terms of sanitation, hygiene. So basically this week is going to be like a preparation week. And maybe now next week now the syllabus coverage so that teachers should know where they left and maybe if they have new kids in school, just to see how they can cope up together. As you are aware, especially now the public schools are going to absorb again a good number of students. The better thing is that most of these kids are not reporting the same time because it's only 2 classes, grade 4 and 8. But I'm sure the public schools are going to absorb a number of kids, more than the number that they had because with the recent shutdown private schools. So I think that is something that we're going to expect. We are going to expect a lot of push and pull because, you know, it is, this is something that has started. It has never been done before. We have teachers who, like, you know, when the president announced that maybe the curve started flattening, and then the Minister of Education said that they are reopening schools, and even as you walk around, you will see there's that people are a bit now reluctant in terms of even walking around with the mask. So again, if the virus again tries to escalate, I think it's going to be like a paradigm shift to all these scenarios. So let's wait and see. I'm sure the media is going to set an eye on what is happening around the country. But as I say, this is just a preparation week, and hopefully everything will be systems go.
Right.
Yes.
For you, Peter, looking at it from a bird's eye view, what are the teething problems you're expecting learning institutions to face a couple of weeks down the line as they try to get back into the rhythm of you know, teaching and learning?
Thank you very much. I think, first of all, the expectations that we have as education stakeholders is that as our children get back to school, they will be safe. They will learn in an environment that is secure, in an environment that promotes safety, and that will ensure the children are healthy as they go about their learning. At the moment, we know there are quite a number of challenges that schools are going to face. At this point in time is getting to the new normal. Letting the children understand that they will not be shaking hands with their friends again. They will not be sitting too close to one another.
Do you think that's feasible? You know, trying to tell your grade 4, don't sit too close, don't high five. How practical is it, you know, like on the ground in the classroom?
You know, in as much as it will be a challenge, but it is information that must be told to the children. That for them to be safe, they have to ensure that there is no handshaking, they do not go close to one another. That we have to tell them all the time. It will be a difficult exercise, but in the fullness of time, we will be able to manage this. We are also alive to the fact that as we get back to school, you know, we have been talking about what are some of the preparatory steps that needs to have been taken into consideration before children reopen. And I want to let all of us know that when COVID happened in our country, the Ministry of Health has come out telling us all the time what needs to be done. So as our children are getting to school, parents exactly know that their children need to wash their hands all the time, their children need to mask, there is sanitizing, there is keeping social distance. Our teachers and everybody knows that. So the only challenge that we're going to face at the moment is how do we now implement that in a school setting, bearing in mind that when we closed, these things were not there. So we are coming back to the new normal. So we are coming back with an understanding that there's something that needs to be done. So in as much as it will be a big challenge in terms of telling the children we'll not be having school assemblies, we will not be hugging one another, we will not be going to play games, we'll have to do a lot of disinfection all the time. Those are some of the challenges that are likely to be faced as we start. But this, we believe, they'll get used to it as time goes by.
Right. There's also another school of thought when you're talking about, you know, trying to save what's left of this particular academic year for the students. And there was this question in terms of, is it the last 2 terms of, you know, your final year that are everything as far as education is concerned? Because essentially, that's what the grade 4s are missing, class 8 and form 4. But they've had 4 years of learning for grade 4, 8 years of learning for the rest. And in form 4, you've had 12 years of learning, so to speak. Surely, in between there's a lot that you can be tested on and see if you can move to the next class. Why are you making it seem that we have to crash all of this and cram this into this particular session so that they move on? Yet, we have to understand you're living in a new normal. Just have them back in, test them on what they've learned so far, and from there they can move on to the next class.
You know, that's a good question. And it is something that we have debated a number of times. But our understanding and finally the agreement is that this content that was supposed to be covered at this particular time has to be covered, right? And how is it going to be covered? It's going to be covered by having children come to school. The teachers will need to reorganize themselves, because teachers, when you give them an assignment and tell them, we want these children to cover this particular content within this time, they are able to reorganize themselves. This is not a crash program. Teachers are able, just give them content and tell the teachers, we want our children by the end of this period to have covered this. They know how to reorganize themselves. They know how to attend to children who are fast learners, who are slow learners, who are everything. Our teachers will be able to organize that. One of the things that we didn't want to imagine is that our children are going to lose an academic year. that would have had a devastating effect, not that to the children, but our country as a whole. Because how are you going to tell children that you're not going to progress to the next level, despite the fact that they have everything that it takes? Some of them have been learning online. Some of them have been, studying privately, and they believe that they are able to transition. So it would have been a disadvantage to these children for them to not transition. So at this point in time, what we are saying is that let the learners come back, let them study, let them cover the content that's supposed to have been covered for this academic year, and then after that, they'll be able to transition. So it's not a crash program. Okay,
let me have Janet Oko in as well. She's an educationist joining us in this particular conversation via Skype. Good morning, Janet.
Good morning, Jeff.
Karibu sana, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Day one of this particular resumption of learning in various institutions. As you look at it, it's a question I'm posing to you as well. What's your biggest concern as we get into this term of learning for our students?
My concern is the preparedness, how schools prepared. And I'm not necessarily very much worried about high school because they only have the fourth form. But I'm worried so much about the primary schools, and in particular, categories of schools. I'm really worried about public schools, and I'm also worried about the private schools, and especially not the really high-cost private schools, because they usually have a way with money. But I'm worried about the up-bed schools. A lot of them have shut down. I know we have Ndoro there, so I'll not overspeak about private schools. But looking at the public schools, we've just seen the government has today made a statement that they have released money. I don't know, I have not verified, and I have not spoken to anybody from the school level to really confirm that really this is true. Because what we're likely to see is the head teachers already have got guidelines, and so they will hype all these matters to parents. Considering where most households are and the effects of COVID on households, this is going to have devastating effects. And we are looking at a situation where we could open, but not for all children. We might just open for a few children that probably their parents can afford a few of the things. I'm not talking about a few things, because I already had a child who was reporting to teacher training colleges, and I had a bill of 4,600 shillings for COVID preparedness, masks, and so on and so forth. And I'm saying, and I like saying this, that 4,000 shillings might be a small amount of money for some households, but it is an amount of money that households don't usually have per year. So that is my concern today.
Okay, and even as you look at that, as you said, at some situation, some might be able to get back to school, some might not. John, I'll come to you this, because even among those who get back to school, there's that discrepancy for those who learned online, those who went and did other activities, and now you're back. Of course, the ministry has said we all start from the same footing, but do you really think that's the case, or do we have a big digital divide that will play out in these successive terms?
Jeff, and I think that's why I also want to agree with Janet at some point, but I want to disagree with my brother Peter, because when you say this is not a crash program, when the president called in a cabinet meeting, it was specific to roll out this crash program, scrapping the midterm break, reduced to almost a week. We are running 11 weeks. This is not the norm, It is not the norm. So I think to me it's more or less like a crash program, because having 11 weeks program for these kids, they have not been in school for almost 7 months. Most of these kids have been undergoing a lot of issues, and coping up with the new norm is going to be a challenge. So let's agree it is like a crash program. Number two, the issue here was, and I talked to you last time, about communication to the parents. The parents should be told, should be made aware on the program that is going to run, everything. As I said here earlier, some of the parents even don't know why the kids, you have a kid in grade 4, but you don't know why he's going, because he or she has not been made to understand there's a CBC program, you have to transit to the next class, all these issues. But we all agree that these kids have to be in school. But again, with the new measures that have been put in place, we have, the way Peter says, it's going to be a challenge, yes, but how are we going to make sure that the government comes in on board, the private schools? Janet has talked about the up-bed schools, and this is the most hurting institution here in Kenya, Jeff. All these schools, most of the schools have been closed, almost 200 plus kids, schools. When you go to Kibra, demolition has been taking place. The other day it was in Nakuru. How are we going to cover, like Olympic Primary School, if you are going to absorb like kids from 200 schools, how are we going to cope up with other kids who are coming from these schools? And yet, we've heard that other kids are coming back to school. So this is a program that it is all of us have to be on board. It's not a one-man show. It is everyone to be on board, but it should be clear that the program is going to run. And when we talk about the funds, I know maybe the government releases funds to this public school, but still upper schools remains a big challenge. And this is the time, Jeff, this is the time that the president and even the cabinet or the CS should have come up and said, I salute the teachers, because we are taking our kids to a situation that we are not sure. Let us not cheat ourselves that we know what is going to happen. This is a pandemic. It is when you go to Europe, when you talk about even the news in Europe, I was talking to a friend in the US. They are just reopened the other day. They have closed again. So this is the time the president should tell our teachers, we are entrusting you with these kids. Please, we beg you, take care of them. If you don't know what is that, please consult. You know, he should salute the way he salutes KDF when they go to war. Right. Yes.
Peter, do you have a rejoinder to John's statement that this really is indeed a crash program with what we're trying to make our children achieve in this time frame that we're giving them?
Yes. I think my brother John has talked about this is not a crash program. But it's actually a crash program. Yes. But I want to tell him it is not. Because when we talk about a crash program, it means something has to be crashed. We either have to crash our children or we have to crash content. At this point in time, none of the above is being crashed. Teachers have been asked to innovatively and creatively look at ways and means through which they can be able to cover the balance of the content for the academic year 2020. That is not a crash program, Jeff.
Okay, yes. So that's your response to that?
Yes.
Okay, let me get Janet in on this one as well, because even as we look at this particular point in time, by all intents and plans, Janet, we are hoping that when they go back to school, we won't have a spike in cases of infection, and that all goes well, they follow the safety protocols, and it goes fine. But we've seen in other parts of the world, from Korea to France, even the UK last week reporting that they're going to stop face-to-face learning in some universities because they've seen a spike in cases, I think up to 5,000 cases in universities because of this socializing that's going on and lack of social distance. Do you feel the Ministry of Education has an exit plan, an emergency button to hit in case we have a spike in cases from these learning institutions?
Thank you, Jeff. I'm having a few struggles here with I hope I just heard your question right.
Okay, I can repeat the question, Janet. That's okay. What I wanted to find out is, do you feel the Ministry of Education has an adequate plan in case we see a spike in cases in learning institutions of COVID-19?
I wouldn't want to really be overconfident. I feel shy to really, I don't want to add any more fears to parents already. But within the guidelines, you've seen the minister saying that they've paired up schools with, public health institutions. And so we're only imagining that will work. But then also, I really like that all these things, there has to be a financial, implication to that. Because even the movement of child from school to the facility and also facilitating a few things would probably require resources. I don't know how schools have adjusted their budget lines, because traditionally the money they are sent for, they are usually on strict budget. And so I don't know if schools have been advised on how they can be able to vary and avail some resources to really be able to take care of some of those contingencies and some of those emergencies, that can come by. And also looking at how schools spend on their clinics, looking at how the matrons maybe have been capacity built to be able to take care of emerging, things, of detecting or even taking temperatures for children. So I think there's a host of so many other things. And I want to say that I'm a little confident with our high schools, but a little bit worried about the primary schools, especially their numbers, knowing how the facilities look like there, but sort of getting some confidence from this staggering, because at the primary school level, you will not have everybody. At least you will have a smaller population that maybe teachers can be able to go around.
Okay. There's also an issue that Janet had raised in terms of the financing of all of this as well. And John, when you think about it, the government hasn't been doing so well when it comes to pledge money for the education institutions. Let's see what happened with the BOM teachers, for instance. They had promised a certain amount of money, and it took quite a while for this to take place as well. When you think about it now, as we're getting to this particular point in time, have they been pushed to the wall that when they say this money has been disbursed, it has to hit the accounts of these institutions now?
Jeff, and I think that's where the problem is. This was a crisis, this was a pandemic. So I think the best the government could have done, especially those in the leadership, the Ministry of Education.
Okay, John, I'll just have to cut you short for one particular second. We have CSO of Education, George Magoha, giving an address. Let's listen in.
The largest primary school in the country. All those issues have been adhered to. I want to thank the Kenya Commercial Bank, which is our own bank, and to state that I think Mr. Ogara has some futures which look like me, because I did not believe that he would have made the masks, because I only went to his office to thank him for some benevolent act that he had done early in the year. He had sponsored 50 students, and in that meeting he says he's ready to sponsor another 100. But then I said in passing, because I didn't want to look I didn't want to look like Oliver Twist. I said that, but we are also looking for masks. And he said, oh, I will give you 1 million masks. I said, how I wish I had come earlier. I said, just give us the specifications. And since we had developed a mask with Dr. Ombajo from the Ministry of Health, the infectious diseases expert who had developed the mask, and since I, as Magoha, don't trust anybody, we went with Dr. Kipsang after several meetings, and we went proudly to 3 government outlets. One of them is Kikotek in Kitui, the other one is the National Youth Service, and the third one is Rivertex. And we intervened and talked to them at length and negotiated the price. And the price at Rivertex turned out to be the lowest at 35 shillings, Kikotek 39 shillings, and I think the National Youth Service at 59 shillings. Those are government institutions. So what Ogara has done is he has moved faster than me, and I think they have made masks, because I can see these children wearing the masks, which means they were made and brought. So can we give a very hearty clap for KCB to act as an example, even to my own ministry, where officers in the field sometimes are not as swift. If it can be done, I believe we gave you the letter not up to a week ago. It's not up to a week ago. Rivertex has the capacity, because I have been there, I can say it, and if you don't like it, go to that other place I always say. It has the capacity. Do you get the point? It is a government agency, and therefore there is no fear of you going there. There are others who offered earlier to give us some masks. But up to now, even the procurement processes have not been complete. So for this purpose of reopening, they may not help. They perhaps may help when we reopen the other one. I want to plead and challenge other corporates that in Kenya, the standard, the gold standard is these 2 children here. We are opening schools for them. If you can't open school for them, the government will not open schools for any other person. So they are the gold standard. May I ask the other corporates to move with us in tandem? Since I have said that social distancing is going to be a challenge, every child must be safely masked. And so, Mr. Ogara, I hope you have given an example to your other colleagues, and that it is also better this way, rather than giving us money, because once you give us the money, then we are tied by procurement processes which don't make sense, and which some people will always utilize for other things. But if anybody wants to help us with these masks as quickly as possible, you have Rivertex, you have Kikotex, and you have the National Youth Service. If you want a point of contact, I am your servant, contact me. Or my person who is in charge of the media, Dr. Siringi there, or Dr. Belio Kipsang. Because as we prepare to open all schools, we are going to need more masks for the less fortunate children. Schools shall maintain updated biodata for all learners and staff and contacts of their parents and guardians in terms of, so that we should be able to relate to emergencies. But I would want to say this as a practicing physician who is on leave. Should there be an emergency, every parent and every teacher shall be a guardian for that time. We cannot wait until you finger the parent. This is our own African culture that unfortunately is dying. So I'm not worried if a child requires help, one of the teachers will automatically become the guardian and the parent, and the others will follow. Because even when my own son had an accident, somebody represented me and secured him and took him to hospital, and he's now paying back. So I'm not quite worried about this. I know for sure that people will argue. In the training of teachers, we are trained to be empathic. What we don't know is that we are all counselors. Can you put yourselves into that mode so that you go the extra mile and help our children? During this period, at the beginning, take time also to interact with them so that the anxious ones can be brought down to the level. I'm going to plead with all parents and school heads, both principals and head teachers, and all the teachers, that unless a child has a pre-existing condition, unnecessary school visits by strangers should be voluntarily toned down for the time being. I am assured, and I've been assured, that all schools have been linked to health institutions. And this is important because in the event that you suspect that a child has fever, the fever may still be from malaria or any other condition. But the important thing is to be able to confirm that as quickly as possible. And if it is anything else, then the public health regulations require that we are informed as quickly as possible, and the government of the Republic of Kenya will do what it takes. Each school shall constitute a COVID-19 response committee and maintain strong networks within the nearest health facility. In simple terms, you have to get your own ways of procedure. For example, this huge school, the staff should sit down and identify which is the best way to react quickly if there is a situation that requires an attention. And our doors are open. Dr. Kipsang, our doors are open to them. Co-curricular activities and school assemblies, with all humility, should be restricted, taking into account social distancing protocols. Have I said that in simpler English, or you want it better? Avoid amassing all the children together for any purpose, unless it's a matter of life and death, for the time being. For example, if you want, if there are 10 teachers and a large school like this, you can have 10 different points to see the children. You don't have to bring them all together. But if you bring them all together, you know what may happen. But still, you are the head teacher, and you must run the place. I want to end, first of all, by re-emphasizing the government's resolve to ensure that as our children come back to school, they are kept in a safe environment. I would also want to urge the rumor mongers and people who just look at negatives and keep hammering them, that these are our children. They are not monkeys. And now that we have decided we are moving forward with them, ours should be to encourage them and not to discourage them. And I'm charging everybody and I believe everybody is related to a child, that from now on, can we have positive thinking, and that if there's a problem, as you point out the problem, also help us to solve it. To our teachers, our gallant teachers, the success of the step that we have made, which is being assisted by other external publics like KCB, shall only succeed if we put everything in what we are going to do. Nobody shall be able to compensate you. We are going to expect that you go the extra mile. We are going to expect that you work overtime without pay. And that is what's going to happen to everybody for the time being. And you are not doing it for the government, you are doing it for our children. So I want to thank you most sincerely once again, Mr. Oegara, and also to hope that by the time the day is complete, maybe I may find 1 or 2 phone calls, and if you see me in your office, it doesn't matter. For us, where we have reached now, even if you give us just 100,000 masks, we shall be grateful for them, because you can see.
CS Education Professor George Magoha just receiving masks from KCB, as well as just giving the steps forward as far as reopening of these institutions is concerned. That address was taking place at our Olympic Primary. That brings us to our break right here on the show. Back with plenty more, of course, as well as your feedback, even as we reopen these particular learning institutions. Are you confident on schools reopening today? We'd love to hear from you. Take a short break. We're back with more. This is K24 This Morning.